Hey class, now it's time to do some art with Mr. Mariani.
So do you guys know that every artwork you look at has a meaning, right? When we go up to look at an artwork, it's like opening or reading a book. We look for what the meaning is, and we understand what it's about. It's the same thing when we talk about this new word, parody. So what does that word mean? It's a confusing word and we've never heard it before. But if we know that art tells a story, then maybe parody could be telling a joke. It's taking what we know about a work of art and changing it somehow, and a lot of times it can be funny. So, the first thing you need is a famous work of art, a work of art that we've seen over and over again, so we're familiar with it. So, many artworks like the Mona Lisa, the Persistence of Time, even American Gothic, we've seen over and over. We know those paintings and we pretty much know what they mean. We've seen them in museums, we've seen them online, we've seen them everywhere, so we're familiar. That's the first thing you need to be. You need to be familiar and already know the story. Once you know the story, then you can make fun of the story or change the story. And that's what so many artists do when they use parody. They take that same story, they change it. A lot of times they make it funnier or they tell a different story themselves. So, in today's lesson, we're going to be learning how to make a work of art that's a parody. Let's go ahead and let's get started. Okay, so we want to learn what a parody is. And we talked about taking a historical work of art and reading the story. So we're looking at the Mona Lisa here. And the Mona Lisa here is one of the most famous works of art of all time. And it's very serious. It shows, it's actually of a farmer's wife. And it talks a little bit about her location, where she's living, all these kind of things. Now, if we want to take that story, and we talked about the idea of parody, of kind of making a joke, what we can do is we can create something completely different. If you add Spider-Man into this picture, now instead of it being about a farmer's wife, it becomes something very humorous. And that's where the joke telling comes into play. But this picture right here wouldn't be that funny if we didn't have the original work of art that we knew. So starting with a famous work of art for a parody is usually the way to do it. So now let's look at another one. The Scream by Edward Munch. It's one of the most popular paintings of all times as well. And it's a very serious painting. It's about a person that is experiencing extreme fright on the bridge. You can see he's got a little bit of a landscape in the background. Now, if you take that and you switch that character, suddenly it becomes very silly very fast. So now with Pikachu in there, we don't have the same feelings or emotions. We don't read the painting the same way now that we have a comical character in there. We know who Pikachu is, and that's another reason why it's humorous. Let's take a look at one more. American Gothic. American Gothic is a painting that is very famous for these very flat expressions on their faces. These two people look like they are having zero fun, and they're trying to show the simplicity of life during that time. Life was hard. It was not meant to be something that was funny or silly. But if you change a little bit, this time we're not going to change the characters. We're going to add things to the characters, and that's another way you can use parody. So if we do this, we give them a Lysol can, some toilet paper, and those masks. We kind of put them in quarantine, and now we've changed the whole meaning. This one's a little bit funny, but also a little bit, it tells a little bit about the time that it's created during. During a time when we're all in quarantine, it's talking a little bit then about what we're experiencing now versus what they were experiencing back then. So you can actually change the meaning of the book, and it doesn't always have to be funny. It doesn't always have to be a joke. It can be something different. Now, today, what we're going to do is we are going to take The Persistence of Memory by Salvador Dali, one of the most famous artworks of all time. Also, this artwork has been parodied over and over and over again. And I'm going to challenge you today to create something that is a parody in this as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to go move into our demonstration, but we're going to keep this picture up in the corner as we work on it. Okay, so what we're going to do now is take our original work of art that is historic, so it already has its story. This one's a very dreamlike story by Salvador Dali, and we're going to parody this art. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw this artwork. So draw along with me as I go through and put together the persistence of memory. So the first thing I notice is in this corner, there is kind of a box, and it has 1 point perspective. So take your pencil and go to the corner of your paper, so you have a diagonal line, make a horizontal line, and then make a vertical line, not all the way to the bottom. Now, I needed a parallel line to this, which means the same, it doesn't go across, so I'm gonna make another line right like that. And this is gonna be that kind of, I guess it's like a bench, or what have it in the back here. Now I'm gonna make that branch, so I'm gonna go up. This is gonna be an organic line or wobbly. So you can go wobble, wobble, wobble. I'm gonna go ahead and make this branch come out. This doesn't have to be perfect because it is a tree branch, so it can be organic, which means those lines are gonna kind of take on a shape of their own. I'll shade this top in right here. Okay, so now I have a branch, I have that box, and I'm gonna move into my horizon line because this is a landscape, and we've talked in the past about landscape. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add in my horizon line, which just means a line that goes from across your painting and it separates the sky from the ground. Okay, the other thing I see in this back here is another geometric shape. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a straight line, make a diagonal. Let's go down a little bit underneath it, a little bit further, diagonal. I'm gonna go vertical, vertical, diagonal. And it kind of looks like a book kind of laying here in the background. Okay, so I have this really, really weird object. It looks like a bird or something. I don't know what this thing is. So we're gonna go ahead and we're going to move this. Just this one is just this really organic creature that's kind of laying. It kind of looks dead in the middle of this picture here. This creature reminds me of another artist named Harmonious Bosch, and he made creatures that kind of look like this. But Salvador Dali was trying to make something look weird. He was using surrealism, so using his dreams to create something. So all likelihood, this is probably something Salvador Dali saw in his dream. Okay, and voila, here's this thing. So do your best at creating that. It's nice because it's organic, so you don't have to get it exact. Get as close to it as you can. Now, in the back of that picture, there are these mountains. And then after those mountains, we can get into the fun part of the parody. So for these mountains, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna make a bump, 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 and go up to the corner and stop. And I'm gonna do some more of those lines going up to show different ridges on my mountains. And maybe another little mountain down here. And I'm gonna have my water, my horizon line, I'm gonna move up a little bit now. So now I have a beach, it looks like, kind of separates a little bit of sand. And over here, I can use sharp lines to cut my mountains to make it look a little bit more like a mountain in the background here. So cutting it up. Perfect. This is good to go. All right, so we now have our persistence of memory. Now, the one thing that makes it very unique is that Salvador Dali is using clocks, and he's talking about the mortality, the idea that people on the earth only have a certain amount of time. We're going to go ahead and we're going to parody that art. And most of the times when this art is parodied, they take those clocks away and they add them with something of a similar shape. It doesn't have to be exact, but a similar shape. Now you see his clocks are like melting, kind of like they were put under like a furnace or into an oven, and they're just kind of melting over the objects they're on. So it gets a little bit challenging when we make it. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I am going to very simply decide on something that is circular. because other than that water bottle in the corner, that hot water bottle, all those clocks are circular. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do donuts. I think donuts would be funny. So instead of thinking about mortality or death like Salvador Dali was thinking, I'm going to think about cholesterol or eating sugary snacks here. So let me start with my donuts. Now let me show you how that's going to look. I'm going to do this part in fast forward because whatever you pick, I want everyone to pick something different, something that's unique to you. Now, remember, you're talking about how can you change the meaning. So adding in more clocks is not going to change what Salvador Dali's meaning. The reading of the painting is still the same. It's about mortality. You got to change it into something funny, but also something that somebody understands or is familiar with. So when we saw the scream and somebody put Pikachu in there, they were taking two things you knew. Number one, the scream, and number two, Pikachu. And that helped to combine to make that joke. So I'm going to go into fast forward mode, and then we're going to meet back up right when I'm done with this. Okay, so what I did is I went ahead and added those donuts in. You can see them kind of melting over like Salvador Dali used his clocks. I used the donuts, changes the meaning. Now it's time for color. I'm gonna go back into fast forward. Okay, so what I've completed here is I have my parody of the persistence of memory. I replaced the clocks with donuts. Donuts were humorous to me. They're iconic. Most people in the United States know what a donut is, so I was able to take something that was a very serious painting and I changed the story using parody to make it somewhat lighthearted or funny. I can't wait to see what you pick to change the persistence of memory. And if you're super creative and you want to keep going, after this, find some other famous works of art to parody yourself. All right, boys and girls, until the next time I see you, please stay safe and stay creative.